Hey nerds, Farmer Jesse here. Welcome to Growers Daily, your daily dose of ecological farming insight. It is Tuesday, October the 7th, 2025, and today we are talking about plants feeding the soil, why we avoid disturbance within reason, and wood chips in the tunnel pathways, or not. So let's do it. All right, everyone, welcome to Tilth Tuesday. Every Tuesday this year will be brought to you by our friends at Tilth Soil. If you are looking for compost or propagation mix, check out tilthsoil.com. Link will be in the show notes. All right, I hope your weeks are off to a lovely start. Yesterday, I got some more sweet potatoes dug, and then it started drizzling, which just makes that job incredibly messy. So I switched over to potting up some blueberry plants that I'd ordered. You're supposed to wait until they are dormant to actually plant them in the field. So I just got to chill with them for a while and had to pot them up just based on the way they came, which is actually fine because I have done practically nothing to prep that plot yet. Funny how life works out that way sometimes. Anyway, today I will continue on our principles of soil health breakdown. So in this first segment, we will talk about what plants and living plant roots bring to the soil health equation. Then in the third segment, we will touch on what minimal disturbance offers for its part. As we talked about yesterday, there are three basic principles to soil health, though some folks stretch it to 4 or 6 or even 10. I like to keep it simple and employ magic numbers as determined by Schoolhouse Rock. And anyway, those principles are keep the soil covered as much as possible, planted as much as possible, and disturbed as little as you possibly can given your context. So we covered the first one yesterday, the covered one. Anyway, today we will talk about the other two a little more, keeping the soil planted as much as you can, but disturbed as little as you can. It may seem on the surface a hair counterintuitive that living plant roots are important to soil health. Like, how does it help the soil to grow stuff with plants? Wouldn't plants be taking from the soil, not benefiting it? Great question, hypothetical inquirer. I would expect nothing less. The answer is, well, photosynthesis. This, as you will recall from school, is the act of turning sunlight, water, carbon dioxide, and nutrients into plants, roots, and food for microbes in the form of root exudates, like little carbonaceous microbial fortune cookies with hidden messages inside. Basically, for a little refresher, plants pull water into their leaves through their roots and use photons from the sun to split those water molecules, H2O, apart, keeping the hydrogen for itself and releasing the oxygen for us to breathe, which is quite kind of them. They then use that hydrogen to create two energy-carrying molecules that will combine with CO2 that the leaves take in from air to create carbohydrates. You can kind of think of carbohydrates like little molecular bundles of energy. So in a way, it's kind of like plants create solidified, sometimes edible sunlight. Obviously, photosynthesis is much more complex and frankly interesting than that, but it's important to understand that plants are using the sun to store energy that it can then turn into roots, leaves, and food for soil microbes. Indeed, as I wrote in the Living Soil Handbook, this process of photosynthesis isn't just miraculous simply because it allows plants to use the sun's energy to make food. It's also miraculous because it allows plants to make so much food that they can not only feed themselves, but also a complex community of soil organisms. There is, in fact, a lot that can be said about that particular part of the process, because not only can plants feed soil organisms with those carbohydrates, but plants can encourage specific soil organisms, protect themselves, and so much more with that same process. It's really an incredible little barter economy that plants help maintain, and in so doing, the soil organisms help create soil aggregates to preserve water for the plants. They gather nutrients and they make them available to the plants. The soil organisms that are sustained via plant roots also help protect that food source by helping to fend off bacteria, fungi, viruses, etc. But living plant roots aren't just sustaining and promoting soil life. They are decompacting the soil. They are building pathways for roots and organisms in water. And when they die, they feed the next crop. So the value of keeping living plant roots in the soil is all of that, plus holding the soil in place, of course, with fine root hairs and keeping it cool and all the other things. However, when there are no plant roots in the soil for extended periods of time, what we call bare fallowing, that is when the soil begins to deplete itself. Like I often say, when the soil is not being fed, it is feeding on itself. The organisms contained therein start to eat up all that plant material or organic matter, and it becomes CO2. Then the soil becomes loose and susceptible to erosion. Now, some examples of what keeping the soil planted can look like: it could be year-round cropping, it could be cover crops, it could be living pathways, it could be interplanting so that you have a nice diversity of plants, because that is also important to not just have any single plant, but to have a bunch of different plants that all bring in their own exudates and their own little chemistry. But the idea is, how can we keep living plant roots in the soil as much as possible without harming production? And that, I guess, is what the entirety of Growers Daily talks about. So, all right, well, That is the short answer for why living plant roots are important. The long answer could be its own daily show, and kind of is. Anyway, thoughts, questions, let me know. Otherwise, it is break time and then wood chip time, or maybe not. We'll see. BRB. Kind of a little poem there at the end. All right, this audio is going to be awesome because it's raining outside, but you can see in that video where I'm doing the blueberries that there's this like mess over here, and what this is our sweet potatoes. I have them curing in our greenhouse. I just have them under row cover, and I tied it off just so rodents couldn't get up in there and, you know, keep eating on them like they've been doing all season. And then this week I'm going to close the greenhouse off to make it a little bit warmer in here, but last few days have been warm enough, and now it's starting to cool off. So I think the curing is going to slow down if I don't close off the tunnel. So anyway, I hope you could hear some of that. Yep. Today's episode is brought to you by Farmhand. Renewal season is here, and the work you put in now is what brings members back next year. Ari Memar, founder of Farmhand and a guest you've heard on this podcast, has worked with regenerative farmers to create a playbook that turns renewal season into a growth season. One farmer, Melanie at Shake Fork Community Farm, brought in $40,000 in renewals in just 2 weeks using this strategy. Now, Ari and Melanie are sharing the exact approach in a free live workshop and downloadable playbook. Watch on demand and get the playbook at farmhand.partners/no-till. That's farmhand.partners/no-till. All right, back to the show. If you, the listener or viewer, are enjoying this podcast, getting even a small amount of value from it, consider supporting our work. Over at patreon.com/no-till-growers, I will try to get to questions from everywhere that questions come in, but I will always get to your Patreon questions. Now, today's Patreon question comes to us from Patreon member Nathan Meadows, who writes, quote, "Hey Jesse, Nathan here, just south of you in Mercer County, Kentucky, Zone 6B. This show has been an excellent addition to all of your work. I'm flipping my tunnel beds and am debating with myself about keeping the pathways bare or using wood chips. They are 1 foot wide pathways. I want to keep them bare to shovel any compost or loose soil back into the beds when I flip them. I want to use wood chips for moisture retention and weed prevention. The only reason I'm leaning away from using wood chips is decaying matter loving pests in my tunnel, as well as wood chips getting kicked into the beds. What do you use in your tunnels, and can you advise for using bare or wood chip paths?" End quote. All right, Nathan, not far from us here, so that's cool, and I'm assuming part of the BBN, so shouts, go Cats. So yes, this is a great question, as you might or might not know. I'm not the biggest wood chip fan for pathways. Don't get me wrong, they are great for the soil. Aesthetically, they are lovely, but they can indeed bring in pests. They can get into salad mixes, and wood chips are wildly uncomfortable to work on/in, especially because I prefer to work from my knees. Now, all of that out of the way, pathways are just annoying no matter what you do with them, no matter what you put there. Pathways do not earn money or grow food, and they are largely just wasted space and wasted labor. If you put nothing there, though, then you have a muddy area that you have to cultivate. If you put living plants there, as I do in the field, then you have to mow and edge them regularly or they become a problem. If you put wood chips there, you have to replenish those wood chips regularly and pick little wood chips out of your lettuce mixes, which can be a pain and frankly really, really obnoxious and slow the whole process down. So there is really no one perfect answer. All the answers to pathways are kind of a bummer. On the positive side for wood chips, I like how they feed the soil. The chips slowly break down, turn into soil organic matter, feed microbes and plants alike, while also helping to retain moisture and suppress, at least for a while, weeds. They can make great fungal habitat as well, and they may provide the only path to revenue in terms of pathway management for things like the Winecap stropharia mushroom, which, okay, themselves are not my favorite mushroom, but if you can find a market, they can really produce in the spring. On the negative side, slugs and arthropods love them some wood chips, so that may encourage those pests to come into the tunnels. The wood chip pieces will absolutely work their way into the lettuce mixes, as I said, and the lettuce heads when you're covering or uncovering them, or when you're just like moving around, or just sometimes when you're breathing near them. Unless you are squatting the whole time, wood chip pathways are not super comfortable to work in, and our kids complain when I add wood chips because they like to be barefoot in the garden. I'm not too worried about the handful of wood chips that make their way onto the bed surfaces in terms of nitrogen tie-up, though that could become an issue if it's a lot of wood chips that get worked into your beds, and or wood chips that could disrupt your cedars as you're trying to seed those beds. As for the bare pathways, this is what most growers use who I know because it's simple if you're willing to put the work in. And in a tunnel, they're not getting moisture as much unless you overhead water them. Therefore, they don't tend to be quite as big of a weed issue in the tunnels. The big negative is, unlike plants or wood chips, bare pathways don't add much of anything to the garden except labor. So again, there is no perfect answer for paths in general, but if I'm going to employ them directly in the garden, the tunnels are where I usually put the wood chips, preferably after the lettuce has come out and the tomatoes are in so that I can avoid the lettuce mix contamination issue. Anyway, what are your all's experiences with wood chips in the tunnels? Yay, nay, let us know. And otherwise, we're going to take a quick break. And when we come back, we get disturbing. Sort of not. It's a soil thing. Be right back.
Farmer Claire Coleman here from the Winter Growers Podcast. Did you know that I also founded Real Farmer Care, a nonprofit that supports farmer well-being? From my own experiences farming, I knew firsthand that this type of support was missing from ag, so I decided to do something about it. As of today, there are over 500 farmer recipients of a $100 self-care award, with more applying daily. If you'd like to help, each $100 donated supports one new farmer. Visit realfarmercare.com to donate and learn more. Again, that's realfarmercare.com.
All right. So yesterday we did the Keeping the Soil Covered episode. Then today in the first segment, we did the Keeping It Planted part. Now in this segment, let's talk generally about disturbing the soil as little as you can in your context. I have already done a segment on what tillage does to soil, but basically the plant roots and the mulch, and all the things are doing a great job of gathering nutrients and sequestering carbon. One of the ways in which that happens is that microbes will inadvertently wrap a little bit of organic matter in a microscopic package of soil particles that they can't very easily access themselves, making that little bit of organic matter stable and less accessible to them. But that's not just a nice stable bit of soil organic matter that can be tapped into at a later date, like a rainy day fund. Soil aggregates also help to keep the soil in place. They help to hold moisture. They help to create habitat for soil organisms. They are incredibly important for soil health. Also incredibly important to soil health, fungi, like mycorrhizal fungi that live in the soil and help protect and feed plant roots, but also your saprotrophic fungi. Those are the ones you tend to see above the ground. Earthworms and other larger creatures like arthropods, beetles, and the rest, those are also important. And all of that is just a long way of saying in healthy soil, there's a near endless array of soil organisms that are critical to a plant's fitness. But when we pulverize the soil, we destroy those organisms and the long-lived packages of soil organic matter that we call aggregates. Then they become vulnerable to bacteria who, enlivened by the oxygen whipped into the soil, eat it all up and release that hard-earned carbon into the atmosphere. Some amount of disturbance is inevitable. I mean, for the moment, one cannot just teleport a transplant into the soil without touching it. We have to dig a hole to make room for a plant. That is not what I consider disturbance. That is just a necessity for growing food. Moreover, some soils do not contain much, if any, beneficial life or soil aggregation, so it's important to insert things like composts and maybe some amendments in there to help establish them, and then, of course, build their populations up with living plant roots. Sometimes compaction is an issue there and may take a few seasons of broad forking to really fix it. So when I say as much as possible at the end of each of these statements, that's intentional. None of these can be approached with dogma. Your soil and the goals must be evaluated properly in the beginning to determine what level of disturbance is right for you and your soil. More to that point, sometimes if your crop list is all directly seeded crops, some amount of disturbance right at the soil surface is going to be essential. For me, I say protect the rhizosphere 4 to 8 inches down, or that would be like 10 to 20 centimeters. That's where the bulk of the soil life is and the soil aggregation is. The top couple of inches of soil, albeit important in terms of erosion, are okay to disturb to some extent as needed, though I should note the more disturbance, the more weeds. So, it's a balance. Anyway, I think that's a good start on these topics, but we can dive more into the nuances of each over time. For now, though, Tuesday, I think we're done here. Don't forget, No-Till Growers is now officially a nonprofit 501c3, so donations are tax deductible and greatly appreciated. You can learn more about how to do that in the show notes. Please make sure to like and subscribe and or follow wherever you're getting this podcast. That's an easy way to help us out as well. Enormous thank you to all of our show sponsors. And if you'd ever like to sponsor the show, you can reach out to Farmer Michelle at no-tillgrowers.com. Huge shouts to Willie Breeding for the theme music and Mike Hilbert for the production help and editing. Also, shouts to Epidemic Sound for the background music that you can hear. Pick up a hat or a copy of my book, The Living Soil Handbook, at no-tillgrowers.com to support our work. Big thank you to everyone over at patreon.com/no-tillgrowers, where at a certain level, or if you just bump up from one level to another, or you sign up in the month of October, you get a shout out on the show. So big shout outs today to, it's our pollinators. Sue Rowland, Thomas Van Wart, Tyler Lloyd, Andrea Front, Tobias Deerdorf, Toss Mann, Cedric Reed, Bill Price, William Wiley Madrow, wish I started 20 years ago, Little Row Farms, Hank Zecca, Ashley Sharp, Jill Crosby, Madison, Scott Roser, Laura Britton, Alberto Diaz, Peter Broad, Jason Ruel, Dwight Yoder, Lynn Tompkins, Steve Hurlbut, Rebecca S., Lee Shelley, Brian McCarthy, Larry Shepard, Martian Cindy, DP, Kat Brannigan, Earthcare Farmer Jane Murner, Derek Page, Meredith Light of Granite Springs Farm, Grown Up Farm, Bob and Ann Patton of Hexhamshire Organics, Jared Kirst of Rivendell Farms, and Fiona and Donnie of Firefly Farms. So many good pollinators. You all are amazing. Coming in clutch this week. So, as you will remember, Marianne, our water-hating heroine, wakes up on a boat in the middle of some unidentified body of water. The boat is pretty long, like kind of like a cheap yacht, you could imagine, with a covered area that she thinks is called the helm, where there is a steering wheel and some buttons and levers, but no clear way to get the engine, running. Nothing she tries works. Nothing she finds helps her understand where she is or how to run the boat. There's a compass, which is good, she thinks, in case a fish challenges her on her cardinal directions. Otherwise, it's just her and a motionless boat. I guess motionless in terms of where she wants it to go. It's just kind of rocking back and forth. But she does find an oar, some food, and some life vests. So she puts on one of the life vests and tries to oar, but rowing a large boat like this on your own is futile. There is a sail, but she can't really figure that part out. She eventually, after the sun goes down, finds a small bed in the cabin and then goes to sleep. It's the next morning when things get interesting, and that's for tomorrow on the boat something. I didn't really think about this one very hard. All right, but we'll do that tomorrow. Thanks for watching and/or listening. We'll see you then.